Welcome into the Win or Hughes podcast as we are ready for another week talking A's baseball. Unfortunately, not a lot of great things to talk about for the A's as far as the team goes. There are some cool things going on with some of the players, but it has not been a pretty start to the season. As I'm joined by my co-host Eric Hughes here on the Win or Hughes podcast. Make sure to like and subscribe. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts. And Rick, we've got a couple weeks of baseball in right now. We've got a little bit of a larger sample size, still early on in the season, but it hasn't been pretty for the Oakland A's. Wins have been hard to come by. The team has struggled a lot, which was expected, but maybe not to this kind of degree. Just kind of overall, what is your general impression to the A's start of the season?
They had a really good series against the Guardians and, roll of the dice, and that could have gone another way with an A's sweep. It also could have gone with a Guardians sweep. So
Mm-hmm.
that was some good baseball, though. Some really close games, fun to watch. Great to see that walk off. And then a little unlucky to come out of that 1-2. Um, so yeah, that was, I guess, the silver lining. It was good to see some offense in the first game of that Tampa series, but clearly not enough when you're giving up so much more runs to the opposition. So a little bit of silver lining, but yeah, the record leaves a lot to be desired. What are you seeing?
Yeah, I agree with the idea that there's some silver lining, but I see that more in some of the individual performances, some of the way that some of those guys have performed. And we'll talk a little bit more about them later on. Like Ryan Noda is a guy. Ruiz has done well and shown a lot of flashes. Kyle Muller has looked really good. And so we'll get into some of those things. I just wanted to start talking about some trends that are kind of concerning with what's going on with the A's offense and their pitching staff. The first one, the starting pitching. On Saturday, we got our second chance to see Shintaro Fujinami pitch, and it was a little bit of the same story as we saw from that first outing. Is he started really well, and when he's on, I mean, he looks like an ace. He's carving through the lineup, but getting through the lineup the second time, when it gets bad very fast. It looks really ugly. I mean, it all went pear-shaped for him. He got a little deeper into the game in his second outing, but once it unraveled for him again, it was walks. He had a hit by a pitch, and once it unraveled, he wasn't able to kind of like limit the damage, just get through the inning, allow a run or two, and just move on to the next thing. It's just once he loses it, it's gone. It's just nothing's there.
So I think one of the things I heard today was for the last 5 years, he has been a reliever. And so I think he's being asked to do a lot more innings than what he's been doing. I know there's been a lot of adjustments as he's come into the league. That was one of the things I wondered on the last podcast. Would it be better suited for him to be a reliever and coming out of the bullpen? I know he's got a 10-year career going so far, but I'm pretty sure what I heard today was he had been a reliever for the last 5 years, and clearly he's not really going the distance with his starts and two starts.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting situation for the A's to figure out because you're right. He has mostly worked as a reliever. He was making starts and kind of trying to stretch his arm out a little bit because he wants to be a starting pitcher, which is part of the reason that he came to the A's is that they guaranteed him a starting spot, which is how they were able to land a pitcher of his caliber in the first place, and that he was interested in coming to Oakland. But you're right, because at some point they have to figure out what's best for the team versus what's best for Fuji. And it's going to be kind of a delicate line for them to watch before you get too reactive early in the season. But you can't have him go out there and just do 4 innings every single time just because he wants to be a starting pitcher. He has shown both things, right? Like he limited hits, he can get strikeouts when he's on, and when he's off, it's a lot of walks. It falls apart really fast. And I just had this nugget as I was like looking through the stat pack. Right now, through the first 8 games of the season, the A's bullpen has covered more innings than their starting pitching. And that is not a good trend. The A's have the worst ERA among starters in baseball through the first 8 games of the season. And it's just over 9.5. An ERA of 9.5, not going to get it done. And he's an interesting situation because we did see a change the rotation because he's only pitching on Saturday as they want to give him that extra rest right now. And that meant that Ken Waldachuk, who pitched after him after the first start, pitched in front of him before this last turn to the rotation. So it does have some moving pieces for the A's rotation. And if they're not getting the results, that's a bit of a problem. And we saw that with the back-to-back games where Ken Waldachuk struggled to get deep into the game. Then you back that up with Fuji not being able to get deep into the game. And there's only so many innings you can ask Adam Oller to eat for you.
I'm not sure that we've seen the complete effect of these rule changes, and knowing that guys are trying to take advantage of the pitchers when they're kind of on the ropes and they don't have those scenarios to get a little breathing room, I think it makes the managers kind of feel like, okay, we got to get our guy out of there before it gets bad. And we've been seeing that, unfortunately, with the A's because we haven't had our starters going very deep. And we haven't had too many opportunities where we've been on the other end of that. We did in that Guardians game when we got, I think it was the first game when we got their guy out of there before 2 innings. So, and that one we didn't even come off to get the win, but it just kind of shows of the damage that it does, just not to the psyche of the pitcher and the catcher while they're trying to control that game. But then, as you can see with the A's, they're getting these huge uphill battles, and they're just not able to come out there and fight back, it seems.
Yeah, it's kind of concerning watching how perfect the A's have to play to get a win. And they're not a good enough team right now to have that kind of margin of error. And they have a lot of errors, and both literally and figuratively. And it, they just don't do enough well to compensate for where they're lacking right now. They have a young pitching staff, not a lot of experience while they're waiting for Paul Blackburn to return from the injured list. I know he made a spot start in Stockton. He's got another minor league start with Las Vegas coming up this week as they're trying to get him back in the rotation. But there's not maybe a set guy in there that you think, okay, well, we can eat these short starts for a little while because somebody's going to carry the inning load for us. And right now they've been relying on a rookie to do that. And it's been Kyle Moeller, who's done a very good job. He's had a really strong start to the season and really rewarded the A's for giving him that opening day honor. But other than that, there's not a lot of guys that are going to you can count on that this is going to be a solid 6 every single time I go out there. And the A's, like they're losing these games early where it just feels almost defeated. Now, to their credit, they're not giving up. They are hanging around. We saw that. We went to the game on Wednesday that day. It was Wednesday or Thursday, that day game at the Coliseum. And, that game looked like it was completely over and lost. And the A's had no offense going until late. Then Ryan Noda hits a home run. Jesus Aguilar has the bat of the year,
That was
just
great.
fouling off pitches and gets the A's back into it with one swing. And if it wasn't for a defensive play by Miles Straw to rob Seth Brown, you're right. We might have been talking about an A's win, but they do have a lot of comeback. They're not giving up on it, but how long can that last before you just get defeated? Every time if you're going out there and you're down 6 runs by the third inning, that's just got to wear on you at some point.
And the feeling that I get is because, like you said, like how perfect they need to play to get these wins. And they have got their backs against the ropes and they're punching and they're punching. But just the momentum feels like if that inning where they're building that momentum gets shut down, that's it. That's all the fight that they got left in them. Both times it went to extras, you saw the Guardians coming out firing in extras. And it just seems like it took everything that they had in them just to get to extras, and the wind was out of the sails. That straw catch that denied Brownie at the very least an extra base hit if it wasn't going over. It just, the whole stadium, you could feel just the wind come out of the sails. Everyone was up for that 3-run blast and really stoked. Kind of seemed like we could put the fight into it. And then, making that catch, it just took all the wind out of the sails, and it seemed like, hey, our fighter's done, throw in the towel.
Yeah, I was just looking it up right now because the A's led spring training in walks, and they were kind of hoping to hang their hat on being able to get guys on base, not necessarily with a hit, but if you get on base with a walk, hit by pitch, the Mark Hanna special, how are they going to be able to take advantage of those new rules and the speed and put that pressure on the other team's starting pitcher or the relievers? And right now, not too bad, but they're 19th or through Saturday. They're tied 19th in walks. They don't have a great on base percentage. We're starting to see some guys maybe heat up a little bit that have had a cold start, like Shea Langoliers had his first homer, a mammoth shot,
Hmm.
404. But, that's a guy that they're hoping to really like help spark the offense a little bit. Cold start for him. We have seen some life from some individual performers that are kind of giving you some optimism that if they can start to turn this around, it's going to be building on some of those individual performances. And I think the guy that really was the star of the week was Ryan Noda this week.
And you're absolutely right to get his
Thank
first
you. Thank
hits
you.
and then to get a couple of bombs as well. But what I think has most shocked me about Noda is his speed, getting from first to third, getting from second to home. And you look at him and he looks kind of like a big boy,
Yeah.
and seeing in the second set of the Tampa Bay series, Aguilar's kind of a big boy and he was going second to home, and it was like as soon as he left third, it was like, why? Why did you? It would have to be a terrible throw, good throw. He was out. For Noda, he looks like he's going to be a little faster than Aguilar, but a few of the ones that I've seen him go on, I've kind of been like, oh no, he's going to get punched out, and he's in there clean. So I've really been impressed by his speed.
Yeah, the A's they're a big team. You just look at them like Seth Brown is a big guy, Aguilar's a big guy, Noda's a big guy. And with the exception of Aguilar, I'm not putting him in that same category. Those big guys got some wheels, man. Like you're right. Noda's fast. Seth Brown is deceivingly quick, but the Aguilar getting thrown out in the game on Saturday. Hey, not his fault. He did what the third base coach did. So the A's do have a little bit of a windmill problem because we saw it the game before when Ramon got thrown out.
Not
And
close either.
yeah, that wasn't close. And you look at Aguilar, he's just hitting the bag as the fielder is coming up with the ball in shallow outfield. And you're right. It was going to take, a perfect, it was going to take something where it didn't go right. They were going to have to fail to execute for him to be safe because he was out by a mile. Like,
They probably could have got him at third, trying to
yeah.
trying to go back because somebody was like, "Whoa, whoa."
Yeah.
Yeah, that was too bad. And then, unfortunately, this goes back to this streak that they've been going on, but they have been just giving up bombs. And I know Tampa Bay's been hitting a lot of homers. I think they're leading the league. I forget how many they even said that they have, but they are just crushing these balls. And so even if we are getting those walks and we want to make those walks count, knowing that we've got some speed, some deceptive speed on the base path, you're not going to beat a team that is just crushing home runs like a homer for each one of your walks.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, just to drive that home, the A's have 8 home runs this season through Saturday. That's 21st in the league. The Rays have 21. And no reason that they've been off to that incredible start, but it is something that is concerning is how the A's offense is like come together. But I did see something that I liked is that Mark Kotze hasn't been as rigid with how he puts his lineup together. Now they have a plan. There's a different lineup versus lefties and righties, and that's pretty common. But he moved Ryan Noda up from the bottom of the lineup to hitting second because the A's need some offense. There's a lot of guys that have been cold, including some of those veterans that they were hoping to help kind of stabilize things like, Jace Peterson and Aletmus Diaz have been a little cold to start this season. They have had some productive at-bats, but, Mark Kotze didn't wait around and say, you know what, I got to give those veterans a chance to get through this. I'm going to put Ryan Noda up in the 2-hole because I need to get something going. And last year, different lineup, but he stacked all his veterans together, and then you'd have all the young guys at the end. So if those guys didn't do it, you were in for 4 or 5, kind of bad at bats, and the A's would just kind of get turned over. Right now, I think he's more looking at it like, regardless of your status, if you're hitting, I'm going to try to bunch you together, and we're going to try to get that pack to generate some offense and hope we find some, something else along the way.
Well, credit to Kate for, not just sticking with the way that he's used to doing things and looking for solutions, because the offense has been lacking. And it's been unfortunate to see the offense pick up a little bit and start getting some runs, but then the defense and the pitching just giving up so much. And not all of them are the pitcher's fault. You got to the home runs are gone. That's sorry, it's that's on you, buddy. But there's been a lot of errors over at second
Yeah.
base, over at right field. And those have been plays that even before the shift rules, like those should be outs, right? And now with the shift rules gone, some of these are ones that you would expect to be an out because you're used to seeing it get picked up in the shift, and the shift's not there anymore, but you're seeing them go under guys' glove. And I know they're probably getting some bounces because they're not out there missing them on purpose, but there's some that you're definitely expecting them to make, and they're getting chalked up errors for.
Yeah, we've talked about this a little bit. Second base is a way more important position this season because of the lack of shifting. We've seen teams try to experiment with how they're going to cover that ground because that hole at second base is back. It exists again. It was gone for a long time. And I saw early on the actual trend has been helping right-handed hitters more than left-handed hitters, which is
Mm.
it's still early. That'll probably balance out because the expectation was left-handed hitters like Seth Brown were going to be the kind of guys that you were thinking, oh, this is somebody that's going to take advantage of these new rules. So far, it's swung towards the righties having advantages, poking the ball the other way a little bit. But, we'll see how that develops. But it is interesting to see how they're going to cover these positions. And I wonder at some point if, they start looking at maybe getting Nick Allen over there at second base every once in a while when he's not playing shortstop, because I know they want to develop him. They want to see if his bat can catch up to where his glove is. He's got great defensive ability. He's speedy. He's quick, and they want him at shortstop because that's another premier defensive position. But if they start feeling like, hey, we need to start shoring this thing up, that maybe he starts seeing some innings over there.
I it's nice to know that it's not just an A's problem. It is something that we've noticed because we're watching the A's games, but I read an article on MLB.com that was saying just the overall batting average for balls in play has increased from around the league. So I think it's something like everyone is noticing and exploiting something that you've mentioned here. Second base is going to be more important. And we're definitely seeing that even on balls hit right back up the middle. So it's been interesting. Nick Allen moving over to second base, I think, could be a good shout. He's got a good glove over there. I love having Tony Kemp in the lineup, and let's be honest, without him, the A's probably don't have any wins.
Yeah, that's true. I think if you didn't make that move, you would still keep Kemp in the lineup, but you'd have to figure out how you're going to position the outfield, and that's kind of something that they're figuring out right now. With Ruiz in there every day, Ramon and Seth Brown is kind of your primary guys. It is kind of tough because whose bat do you want to take out unless you were going to maybe have a day off for Aguilar and he's going to be on the bench and you can move Seth Brown to first or DH him and get Tony Kemp in the outfield to maybe have Nick Allen playing second. But there's a lot of flexibility. We've talked about that before on the podcast. This A's lineup has a lot of flexibility about where guys can play and move. I think early on they're trying to get some things settled, see where we are, see when guys get settled into their roles, what kind of lineup that you're going to have to be able to run out there every day. But you got a guy like Ryan Noda, we keep coming back to. He is making it easy for Mark Kotze to fill out the lineup card because he's
Mm-hmm.
just giving him reason after reason to put his name in the lineup the next day. And that's what you got to do when you get that opportunity is don't give him a reason to take you out. And we've seen that from Noda, I think, has been the big star this week. The other guy that I'm looking for as a silver lining as we're waiting for the A's kind of to gel and put it all together is Ruiz. Estuary Ruiz has gotten on base in the first 8 games, the only guy in the lineup to get on base in every game. He got his first steal of the year, which was a little surprising given how often he's been on base. We've seen his speed, play a factor in the outfield. We've also seen it on the base paths when he's, basically catching up to anybody who's, if he's on first and someone's on third, he'll be tagging him in the back by the time they're both catching home. And, I think that's another one of those things that in a season where the A's aren't expected to have a lot of wins, I'm looking for those individual performances that the A's will ultimately fill in from some of the guys in the minor leagues that have high ceilings to kind of really fill out what this team is going to be in 2-3 years.
Yeah, he's been great. He's gotten a couple of big hits too, especially in those A's wins, and definitely been a contributor to those wins too. So he's definitely been a silver lining. Noda, like you mentioned, Langoliers, he's doing all right. I think my expectations were probably to have I had higher expectations for him, I think, than what I was seeing so far. So I know that he's young too, so that's part of it. But yeah, there's been some silver lining. Mueller has been great. The surprise. I know that was one of the things we talked about in the first podcast. A rookie pitcher coming up. You're kind of putting a lot on his shoulders, and he's been able to step up and handle that expectation. So he's been the shining light in the pitching aspect of it. And so hopefully we can get some of these other guys going, and hopefully we can chalk up some more wins. But we are going to need that bullpen to, well, they might just need a break.
Yeah.
That could be it already.
I mean, they're going to have to carry a lot of this load. And we saw Adam Oller had a pretty good outing when he came in for Ken Waldachuk in relief. And I think there were some high expectations, like you said, for Langoliers and even Ken Waldachuk based on the way that they finished last season and that they looked really sharp. They looked like they'd kind of figured it out. It's still really early. We're not even 10 games into the season yet. So there's still a lot of time for them to kind of get back into it. But you're looking at these ERAs right now for the A starters. Ken Waldachuk, 2 starts, 14.54 ERA. Shintaro Fujinami, 17.55 ERA. And there's a lot of innings that these bullpen guys are going to have to cover because you're going to need Adam Oller and Adrian Martinez. And right now, JP Sears is in the starting rotation, but maybe he's one of those swing guys moving out to the bullpen at some point where you're going to have to see the A's try to cover some of these games a little bit in tandem, the way the A's did when they first called up Jesus Luzardo. And he would come in after Sean Manaea. Like Manaea would go the first 5-6 innings, then they'd bring in Luzardo for like 3-4 innings to just kind of get his feet wet. That maybe you're going to kind of see that kind of tandem rotation start so that if it is a Ken Waldachuk day, it's also an Adam Oller day. If it is a Fuji day, expect it to also be an Adrian Martinez day, something like that.
See, I don't wonder if Fuji should be that guy, considering that he already has the experience of relief. He wants to build up to that starter. I know he wants to be an A's starter. I want to be an A's starter. That doesn't mean that I'm fit for the job.
Yeah.
And so, I don't wonder if that wouldn't be the good spot for him to go in. Also, considering that I think we're looking at managers seeing pitchers go against the ropes and not wanting to have a Fuji reenactment where all of a sudden we can't get out of it and there's 11 runs in one inning. So I do think that we are seeing the starters not really getting those chances to get out of trouble where they would, just because the games have changed a little bit. And so that's where I'm thinking that could be a good spot for Fuji to go and get a few innings, and he'll still be seeing the guys the first time through, but now he's already in the fourth or fifth inning instead of seeing them the second time through in the fourth or fifth, or unfortunately maybe in the third. Hopefully
Yeah.
that doesn't happen again.
I think they're going to give him a couple more starts before they even start really seriously considering that. They just want to give him an opportunity to build into this. And we have seen the potential. We see why they want to give him that opportunity. And you see that in the first, 2 innings when his first start against the Angels. You saw that in the first, 3 innings against the Rays where he looked fabulous. But then it gets bad fast. And I think that we saw that with Adam Oller. He knew this last time that once it starts getting bad, hey, I got to be ready, because that first time it seemed like it was like, hey, you got to get in here now.
Well, even on Saturday's game, he pitched one that was fouled off. It hit the umpire, and they were checking the umpire for a little bit, and he was able to get out of that inning, but he looked effectively wild. Where Langoliers had set up somewhere and the pitch was nowhere near the target,
Yeah.
but the guy's still swinging and missing. And there was one he punched the guy out, and like it came all the way inside. The guy swung and missed, but he was missing the target. And after the umpire got hit in the face, it was like the next 3 pitches were like nowhere near the target, but the guy was still swinging and missing. So yeah, and that was pretty early too. So I don't know if maybe he got a little lucky on that one where the wheels falling off. Was there just miscommunication on where they were trying to go and what they were trying to do? But I did get a little worried watching that, and I was like, "Uh-oh, this is kind of how it goes for him. And I was a little worried that we were getting to that point. Luckily, he was able to get out of the inning, and those didn't turn into some hard hit balls.
Yeah, I think the concern is that it's self-inflicted damage. It's these walks, it's you're right. He's losing control on the arm side. The ball's flying out, not near the strike zone. It's not even like attempt for the hitter to think about swinging at some of those pitches. So they just sit back there and park it. And then he's walking in runs, got a hit by pitch on one of the batters. And, you can't have those self-inflicted things over and over and over again. It just makes it so much harder. And then again, it's 2 outs and you're just so close to getting out of that inning without it like really devolving, and a 2 out, blast. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, this is a same thing that happened for Ken Waldachuk. He was so close to getting out of that, and it's a 2 out grand slam and it's just gone. It just erodes that quickly. And that's one of the things that, he's young. You're going to have to learn how to limit that damage and, live with the fact that, yeah, I'm giving up a lot of runs right now. My job is to minimize that, move on, try to get back out for the next inning. Just try to stop this right now rather than let a team hit through the cycle, or go through their whole lineup every single time that you're losing control. I mean, you can't walk 3-4 guys in an inning and expect to get out of that clean. It's just not going to work.
Yeah, and it's the series with Tampa Bay has just been a little bit of a bummer. Just thinking, yeah, the record is not looking very good at this point, but knowing that you put up a fight with the Guardians, and those were some games that they could have won, but coming into Tampa Bay and just getting blown out, it's unfortunate, getting, was it 5 runs in the Friday game? And I think they lost 9-5, right? You can't give
how
up.
many they scored? The A's
Yeah,
scored? Yeah.
yeah, and it's just, you just can't give up that many runs. So it's a bummer. The offense clearly isn't going all the way yet. There definitely has been some silver lining. But just with the Guardians, it kind of seemed like, okay, we're on the cusp here. We're on the cusp. And I get it, it's the first road trip. Maybe there's some things to do
Against the
with
best
that.
team in baseball right now. The team that started the best by far has been the Rays. So that there is a little bit of, you're trying to turn the corner and playing the best.
You're right. And the Guardians are a good team, and the
Mm-hmm.
Angels are a good team. So, they've been playing some good teams here. I know Randy Rosarina doesn't get the spotlight that Mike Trout or Otani get, and maybe that's because we're on the West Coast. But he is just one of the star players in the game, and he's just really exciting to watch. Hate that we're not in the World Baseball Classic again. It's just kind of the same as Mike Trout. I loved it when I could just root for all the great players, and now we're back to when they're doing well, the A's are not doing well. So you're right. It's just a really good team right now, but got to find a way to limit those home runs and limit those mistakes, because there's been just too many mistakes.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm just wondering when that is going to happen, because in baseball, things build on themselves. That's what you're talking about from that Guardians game. It looked like they were building better habits in certain areas. The offense was coming around a little bit. They were finding themselves some confidence. They weren't quitting on it. And even the game that they lost, when they came back, went to extra innings and lost to the Guardians after the Noda homer and the Aguilar homer, that shows that, hey, we're in this. We believe we can come back. We believe we can win. And it's, winning is learning. You have to learn how to do it. It's a skill. It doesn't just happen because you're good at hitting or you're good at pitching. You have to learn that those little things are important, and to value each at bat, to value each inning on the mound. And that's part of this process. Their best starting pitcher so far this season is a rookie with some major league experience, but Kyle Muller is looking really good. He's looking like that's where you're going to start building on, watching a guy like Kyle Muller pitch well, can start building that the next guy wants to match that and do better. And they've got to learn how to do all of those little things. It's just part of the process.
Yeah, we're gonna have to, excuse me, we're gonna have to get some more guys going, and get them going consistently. This is a team that I think we did expect to make some mistakes. We saw last year's team make a lot of mistakes, 2 outs, letting balls drop between third and shortstop. And I think nobody thought that we were going to come out and, go fighting for even a wild card spot this year. I think I was expecting maybe a few more wins in the win column at this point. It's unfortunate because, like we were talking about, a coin flip, and they could have got a few more wins. But
Hey, do
yeah,
you know what
hope
the over and under for this season is for wins? And at first I thought it was way too low, and now I want to know what you think. It was set at 59, and that
mm,
was less than what they had last year. And at first I was scoffing at that, being like, man, this team looks so much better than last year's team. How could it be at 59? And now, now I'm like, I can see it. Like,
yeah, I mean, there's definitely some growing pains. The
yeah,
veterans, they haven't all gotten acclimated, it seems. The rookies have been coming up, some of them unfortunately with maybe expectations that they're not maybe able to match, and some of these guys have come up and had a little bit of playing time, but they're still in their rookie year. So I wonder if mentally they're just kind of in a sophomore slump, even though it's not really their second year of service time. But yeah, hopefully we can get something clicking, and baseball is just such a streaky game, right? And so all it starts is, with maybe picking up a win on Sunday against the Devil Rays, taking that momentum into your next series, and then you come home to the Mets. So, walk in the park.
yeah,
So
right.
we'll
Yeah,
have to see, but hopefully we can get some momentum swinging in that way. The mistakes though, it's just unfortunate because the mistakes are just they're coming from the pitching staff. They're coming defensively, and they're also coming from the coaching staff. When
yeah.
you're sending a guy and you probably shouldn't be sending them. And we've
The
seen that.
fleet-footed Jesus Aguilar.
But even Laureano, and you don't know, right?
Yeah,
Because if Laureano stays on third, maybe there's different pitch selection. But then when he gets thrown out and the next batter gets a base hit, you kind of assume that would have turned into a run,
right.
right? So, I like to say fortune favors the brave. I a lot of times I do. Why did you hold him?
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
what?
yeah.
And you'd rather see him fight for it and go make that play at the plate and go for it. But that Aguilar one, it was like there
I
was
know.
no way.
No chance. Yeah. And and he's one of the guys that's kind of come on. I know he's hitting pretty well. We've seen a little bit of that power. That was one of the best at bats I've seen in a long time. His at bat against the Guardians on that day game, he's just fouling off pitches. And I think Ken Korak in the call had a great call of that homer, is talking about how it was one of the best at bats you're ever going to see, because he was fouling it off. He was hanging in there, and you could see that game within the game when they're like, okay, I'm setting up this pitch to do that. And then when it came time to execute that, he was like, I'm on it. I'm not going to swing at that. I'm good. I know what I'm doing.
And with the change of rules, with the pitcher not being able to get him out of that zone the way they used to be able to get out of that, right? Like, oh, you know what? I'm gonna tie my right shoe right now,
Yeah,
and then I'm
right.
gonna do a pick off to first, and it's gonna be a minute and a half between pitches. So that's something that I think we got to see a little bit. Luckily, we got to see that a little bit against the Guardians. We got to see the bats because we've unfortunately been on the receiving end of that too much, where our pitchers are getting their backs against the walls and they just aren't able to turn that around and just close it down mentally. So hopefully that's something that's gonna get worked out. I don't know if that's like, I know Fuji's first start said it was a sequencing thing. What do you think? Are the guys just not on the same page? Or is it just like mental? Is it nerves? What do
I
you
mean,
think's going on there?
it's probably a little bit of both. I mean, he is learning how to do this. And so when things are going bad, it's harder to keep your confidence up. But for him, it definitely seems that there's something, whether it's, mental focus or some kind of mechanical breakdown, because this is what we saw from him in spring training. A lot of walks, he limits hits, and he walks a lot of guys. And, during spring, he was able to work around a lot of that. And you'd have these kind of bizarre stat lines where he'd give up like one hit, walk 5, strike out 4, and have no earned runs. And that's continued in here. But now, because you're sitting in here against the big leaguers every single outing, there's not like a gap in there where you're going to face a minor leaguer like you would maybe in the spring that can maybe help you out with a weakness in that lineup. But I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see, because some of the mistakes that you're talking about are guys that, the A's trust. Ramon Laureano dropping balls that he normally gets to. And, that's something you don't just look at and be like, oh, they got to play somebody else there. No, that's the guy you want. He gets to the ball,
Yeah.
just didn't hang on to it. And so some of it is, very simple analysis, which is just play better, play to
Mhm.
your ability. But just before we get out of here in the last few minutes, I did want to ask, what are the trends that you are looking forward when you see these guys? You're thinking like, all right, this is what I want to watch for the small improvements this week. This is what I'm hoping to see as the A's try and turn a corner.
Well, to finish off this Tampa Bay series, I want to see the ball stay in the yard because it has been flying out of there.
Unless the A's are a bat.
Exactly. Yeah, that would be good. That would be the other side is I want to see more pop coming from
Yeah.
the A's, and just some more consistent hits. With the batting average, the balls put in play being up through the league, we got to put these balls in play. And so that's kind of what I'm hoping for. That's one of the things we said early is it's consistency. And I know it's kind of early in the year, but that's also why you do spring training to get ready for the year. So we can't keep saying it's early, it's early. At some point, we got to come out, we got to get ready, and we got to get up for these games. So that's kind of what I'm hoping to see. What about you? What
Yeah.
are you looking for?
Just adding to what you said, I think Marcotte says about 100 at bats is when he's got to stop thinking that it's early, about 100 at
Mm.
bats. And right now, Seth Brown and Ramon Laureano leading the team. Seth Brown has 30. Ramon Laureano has 29 at bats. By the way, he struck out 11 times in those 29 at bats. But
Mm.
that you're right. I mean, it's hard to judge like that. It is still early. They did have spring training to get ready for it. And looking at these things, I think there's some of the guys that you've seen before. So you're like, I know that this guy can be better. And Shea Langoliers is an example of that. Like, I know that he can be better. He did have a strong spring. I saw what it looks like when he gets hot and he puts it together. It's not there right now, but there's nothing that he's doing that makes me think like, oh, this guy's lost. He can't hang there. So I'm watching for a guy like Langoliers to really kind of maybe start coming out. He had his first homer in Tampa. And if you start getting those guys, you can line it up where you're getting production from, say, a Ryan Noda in there, and then Shea Langoliers. That really starts to bring some depth to your lineup. And that's what I'm hoping to see maybe start to kind of come around a corner a little bit.
Well, the last thing I want to say, I know we're kind of getting towards time here, but with this Autism Acceptance Month, I want to give a big shout out to Diaz for bringing awareness to autism and neurodiversity, and I really love what he's doing with the gloves. And I think
With his
that's a
batting
great
gloves. Yeah.
with his batting gloves. I think just a great way to use his platform there. So that's been a fun thing to see. And hopefully he's one of the guys that we can start getting it going this month and start dropping some bombs on the Devil Rays.
Yeah, the A's have an all-time good guy lineup between what Diaz is doing with the batting gloves and raising awareness, and then Tony Kemp. Hey, just a generally
Mm-hmm,
awesome guy,
mm-hmm.
and all the work that he does in the community. So the A's players on the field are easy to root for, even though the team might make it a little difficult from time to time, but the players are really fun to root for. Rick, hopefully we have more positive stuff to talk about when we get together next week to talk a little A's baseball. I know it hasn't been the best first 2 weeks of the season. There have been some positives, but hopefully we have some more to build on as the A's can start maybe putting some wins together instead of just winning one out of every three, or knock on wood that they can win one of every three. You'll take that in Tampa Bay. This is Winner Hughes. I'm Joe Hughes, my brother Eric. New podcasts out every Monday. Make sure to like and subscribe, and you can find us on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts.